Today we're in a 2004 Ford Ranger and we're going to be looking at all the spark plugs. You can look up your firing order and it'll tell you which cylinder is which. I have a cylinder 6 intermittent misfire on this, so that would be that cylinder right there forward of the engine over there. So I got the evens on this side, odds on the other, and I'm just going to lay them out in this magnet tray along with the coil pack bolts. So we're just going to go ahead, take them all off at once, bring them inside where it's nice and warm, and we'll do all the tests on all the spark plugs and gap them all and everything like that. Alright, the easiest way to get these clips off, because sometimes just pressing on these doesn't really bend it up a lot, especially when it's cold out. So if you put a flathead just in here while pushing, you get the flathead underneath it, and then you can use that to make it easier to wiggle up. I can't feel my fingers right now. Alright, after getting all those clips up, I'm going to make sure that I replace the spark plug holes with these coil packs back in the same hole they came in. So I'm going to take one out, set it aside somewhere where it's going to be safe and out of the way. Use a ratchet, not an impact. Don't use an impact on your spark plugs. If you do, you might strip out the threads in the head of your block. Anyways, I have this short handle, so I'm going to use two hands. Alright, so first bank. This is technically bank 2. Bank 1's over on the driver's side. So bank 2, I got these 4 out. This one here is this spark plug here going towards the front. So you can see the second spark plug is discolored, and it's not supposed to have a gap that big. You can see it's I'm surprised, even looking at, you know, some of these other spark plugs, this thing was running as well as it was. But you can see this gap is, you'll see on the new spark plugs, that's a huge gap, and it physically looks, you can see there's a taper to the curved portion. It tapers, it gets thinner towards the point. That's where the spark happens. So these have been worn way down, and it's a good thing I'm replacing them. It'll help this run way smoother, more power, all that fun stuff. So let me get the other side out. We'll get them on the tray, and then we'll go get some replacements as well. The hardware, some of it looks a little bit crustier than others up here in the rust belt. This is fantastic, considering that there's none on the threads. So that all's going back in. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you're taking out things like these coil packs, they have this rubber ring on them, and it's pretty loose. You can see it spinning here. It's only held on by a few really small plastic nubs that kind of just go over the lip. So when you're pulling these out, if they haven't been pulled out in a while, they'll stick to the head of the block there. So just make sure you don't drop them down and lose them, because that's what keeps all the crud out of your cylinders there. You can see that guy back there. I have was it like a 5/8, I think, spark plug socket with a 3-inch extension. So sometimes it's good to have just a standard socket, which is basically just a deep well socket with a magnet built into it, but it's handy enough where I bought one. But it can be hard to get down in places like that where you can see there's all those brake lines and stuff. So, you know, just be careful not to bend or break anything if you do anything like this. Let's get you an angle of me trying to get this out with one hand. So you can see probably somebody already broke it in the past, so I want to be careful. And now we're hitting that brake line up there. So there we go. So you can see that magnet really comes in handy. I'll probably have a link with something like this in the description there. But any of them do. It doesn't really matter what brand for a spark plug wrench. This really shouldn't be on very tight. You can see here, back of the engine, front of the engine, front of the car. These opposing cylinders are pretty messed up. But we're gonna go ahead and for fun, we're gonna check each of these with an ohm meter just to see where they're all at within a range, and then we'll go ahead and throw in some replacements. Alright, so I got 8 of these Champion double platinum spark plugs. Come in a box of 4, and then inside the box is a box of 4 of these guys. So we're going to go through each and every one of them, and we're going to gap them. And what we're going to do is we're going to take it on our spark plug gapper. Remember what our gap was supposed to be. We're sitting pretty right around 41, 42-ish. I believe we're aiming for 37. So instead of using this to gap it, what we're going to do is make sure we turn it. So we're going to use the back of it any around this area or around this hole. We don't want to use anything around the edge here for since this is our measuring scale, we don't want to use that to gap, otherwise it'll mess up your spark plug gapper. Give it a little bit of a push, check where we're at. Clearly I push way too hard, so we're going to go inside this hole right here, see? And we're just going to use a little bit of leverage like this. You can go the other way like this and then pry push down like this, but I prefer to put it in and hook it right here, and then you can pry against the spark plug. Really don't need a lot of pressure. Just keep yiggling it. We're right back to where we were, so clearly I yiggle too hard. So we'll yiggle a little bit more. And we're at like 37. So we're going to go through, we're going to gap all of them. It's going to take a little while to gap them all. That probably wasn't, any of that was probably not in frame. But you can see that the tips of these, whoa, that stinks. Come on, focus. There we go. They look a lot better than the other ones. Nice square thick ground, so that'll, or anode, nice and thick, so that'll help out a lot. There's a point to help direct the spark there, and besides that, you know, they put in the year, make, and model, so besides that they all match up. But you can see how thin that ground was in comparison to how thick this one is. I say ground because that's directly tied into the threads, which is tied into the block, which the block is grounded. So it is technically a ground or an anode. It's the same thing. So we're going to go through all spark plugs and then toss them in the car. Or in my case, the truck. We're out here at the truck. Got my socket wrench with my magnet here for my spark plugs. So that'll make sure that when I drop it down in the cylinder, it's going to make sure that it finds its home. Now, I have this here handle because you want to finger tighten these down until they stop. You don't want to start off with the wrench, and definitely not with any sort of impact or anything. Otherwise, you'll run a even higher risk of stripping out the threads in the block. So this one, like I said, is really old. I got it from my father. It's a pass-through style. I'll link something similar in the description. I'm just gonna go ahead and slap that down on there, tighten, and I'm just gonna one hand and just get it snug. I don't want to over tighten it. Like I said, it's as long as it's snug, the chance of it coming out is basically zero. Go ahead and slide that down. Make sure you got that rubber ring on there, as you can see, and it should make a little bit of a clipping contact. It's not gonna make an audible sound, but you can it's not gonna make an audible sound, but you can feel it when you push it down in. And then you can connect the clips before or after the screws. I haven't really found a huge difference one way or the other. And then just repeat the process. Alright, so I got all these in. I'm just gonna start each one of these screws by hand, and then I'll go back through with a wrench and hand tighten them. I think I spent like $75 on all my spark plugs. So on this bank one side, one thing I just noticed on this, I knew it was a little worse for wear. You can see some rust got down in there onto the coil there, but also you can see right there, if it'll focus again, it's cracked. So this might be an issue as well. I'll probably have to order one of these. But as you can see, the boot looks extra worn as well, which probably contributed. Now I'm going to throw it back in. Since this is bank 1, it isn't an issue right now, I guess. It's not misfiring, but this spark plug was the other side that had damage on it. So just finished tightening up all of the coil packs before we call it a job done and drop the hood and pull all our tools away. Before we do all that, we gotta start it back up, make sure it runs well. Overall, it doesn't run worse than it was. The starting slow is because I need to replace the battery. I have a new battery for it, but I also have new battery terminals, and I've been neglecting to feel like changing them. So, and instead I fixed a misfire issue. I'll drive it on a couple days, and we'll see how it goes. If this helped you at all, or you liked the video, leave a like, and if you didn't like something, comment down below and let me know what I can improve.